Before I begin talking about hunting and fishing subsistence strategies, I would like to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to be here in this Indus University and share my views with you. I'll begin my presentation, and I'm dedicating this to my teacher, our beloved teacher, who we lost just 2 months ago, who started this field in India and who has established this field on a very firm footing. And since this is my first presentation after that, I'm dedicating it to my teacher, Dr. P.K. Thomas. Now coming to this hunting and fishing evidence, we know that all of us, we read from books that human beings were hunter-gatherers, then turned to food producers, and then turned to pastorals, and then we are now industrial phase, and etc. What kind of evidence I'm going to use is these kind of 4 types of evidence. One is the direct evidence of animal remains from the archaeological sites, which is my profession for the last 30 years. Bones, teeth, horns, antlers, etc., etc. Also the otoliths of fish, because like we have stones in our ear, fish also have stones in their ear, and these stones survive in the archaeological record. So from this we are able to understand what type of fish were there in archaeological sites. Then the artifacts which are made from bones, such as bone tools, weapons, fish hooks, many of the fish hooks which are made from copper, iron, or bones also. Net sinkers which are made from terracottas and bones and other materials, stone, etc. Then there is a pictorial evidence that we have a very rich heritage of rock art, going right from the Paleolithic period right up to modern period almost. Pottery paintings are there, and some of them I'm going to use them as visuals. Then there is literary data, vast literary data in Sanskrit, Pali, Prakrit, and many other languages, which also talks about animals and hunting and fishing and other subsistence activities. And lastly, the ethnographic data, or what we call, or what we say, using contemporary societies and how they look at fishing and hunting strategies. Here we use analytical reasoning. So the kind of evidence which is coming directly that we consider this as a topmost priority, and then to corroborate the other type of evidence is used. Now this is just a pictorial presentation of how human beings were living, and they were hunting animals, large animals or big game animals. Now we have the earliest period of humanity is what we call Paleolithic period, and there are 3 divisions, as archaeologists know about: Lower Paleolithic, Middle Paleolithic, and Upper Paleolithic. The evidence as far as this phase is concerned is very scanty, because we have only 2 sites so far which have given us evidence, and one of them is Ellora, which is just the site next to, in front of the famous Ellora temples. And another site is Kalpi in Uttar Pradesh, where evidence of Upper Paleolithic bone industries and use of bone tools has been found. Then, as I talked about the rock art scene or pictorial representation of hunting strategies, we have very rich evidence of hunting, and hundreds and hundreds of rock paintings are there of various periods, right from Mesolithic period at the famous site of Bhimbetka, and many sites in Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Andhra Pradesh, Kerala, which I am recently working on. So we have numerous such pictures which show variety of hunting scenes. Here what you are seeing is a kind of a community hunting scene, and then what I am showing you here is an individualistic hunting scene. An individual on your right side is hunting a bird which is perched on a tree, and on the left side another person with bow and arrow is hunting an animal. So we have many ways of hunting animals, like large game animals have to be hunted communally, or many people have to participate, whereas individual hunters can go in the forest and do small game hunting. So we look at all such kind of possibilities when we interpret the archaeological record. Is another hunting scene. Why I am showing it here is because hunting or fishing or gathering food is not just for sustenance. It also creates many social bondages, especially with food sharing. And we have a lot of anthropological work being done on this, which shows that food sharing is the basis of human bonding. So this kind of evidence also we use when we talk about hunting and fishing in ancient India. The title of my presentation is I'm going to give you an overview of hunting and fishing practices right from the very early period running from, for say 2 million years up to almost modern period. So it's a very vast period that I'm talking about. Now I will come slowly to the different phases of archaeological record and what we find where. Now we have certain sites which only hunting and fishing as subsistence has been found. We do not find evidence of any domestic animals at these sites. And these examples are a site in Langnaj, here in Gujarat, Damdama, which is in Uttar Pradesh, where, interestingly, very large fish from Ganga, perhaps, or one older channel of Ganga, so maybe it was an older channel of Ganga, and dolphins have been found at this site. So they were hunting such very large big fish using net sinkers, arrowheads, and maybe some other techniques. Now what they were actually using, we will not know. In archaeology, we'll have to just go from artifacts to the conclusions. There is another site of Mahada, where only evidence of hunting large animals and small game animals has been found without any domestic animals. And the next presentation you are going to get on domestication, where many other things will be cleared. Then we have beginning of domestication. I'm deliberately not using words like Chalcolithic, Neolithic and such words here. We have site of Bagor in Rajasthan, Laura Deva, and a new site called Pand in Bihar. Now these two sites particularly, which are in Ganga Valley, Laura Deva and Pand, they have given a clear evidence of an early phase of pre-domestication subsistence activities, where they completely relied on fishing and hunting small game animals. Then there is another site called Raja Nalka Tila and Pakkakot, along with another site in Uttar Pradesh, Hitapatti, where we have evidence of several bone arrowheads, nicely made, polished ones, charred at the tip so that they get hardened and they can penetrate the hard skins of animals. Also we have carriers to carry these arrowheads, carriers made from bones, like bottles, looking like bottles. Large bones of animals were hollowed, they were polished, and they were made like carriers for arrowheads. And interestingly, we have also some poison bottles. That's what we think of, that they may be poison bottles. Because the bottles are very small, like say about 3 centimeters tall, and nicely made hollow bones, and with a cap, a bone cap fitting to it, so that the liquid will not spill out. So probably, and this is coming from Raja Nalka Tila particularly. So perhaps these were the poison bottles which people were carrying, and this poison was used on the tip of the arrowheads to kill fish. Because why I'm saying this kind of conclusions are because of modern ethnographic parallels are there, where many communities still practicing fishing in that way. We have many such people living in forests in Kerala, Odisha, and many other places. Now just to show this audience, because you might not have seen how the bone tools look like, this is how the bone tools look like. These are the tools which are used for a variety of purposes. For skinning the animals, cutting meat, for removing the hair. Some of them are agricultural tools as well. You can use them for digging soil for a little shallow base, something like that. Now here I am presenting how, with what models we are interpreting the hunting and fishing evidence from such a vast period. First is, we will have some specialized hunters. That means these people will rely only on fishing and hunting, and mostly doing for most of the time of their life, individual hunting. Because for community hunting, we require effort, we require energy input, we require to give food input, so that the people will come together and eat meat and then do the hunting. Then we have agriculturists. After the food production stage came up, agriculturists, which I call them opportunistic hunters. I have an example, and I'm going to show it in some later slide, that these are basically agriculturists doing agriculture, but whenever they have chance to kill animals, they will hunt the animals and do fishing if there is a lake nearby, and they will do what I call opportunistic hunters. Then there are pastoral nomads who will take their flock of sheep, cattle, maybe camels, and along with that, they will do occasional hunting or again opportunistic hunting on the way or wherever they go from one area to another area. And this example of this I have from a site called Madina in Haryana, a PGW site, what we call painted grey ware site, and there is a clear evidence of that people were pastoral, but they were doing opportunistic hunting or occasional hunting. So the amount of wild animal bones or wild animal remains is just marginal, about 8 to 10%, not more than that. Then we have settled urban people or rural people who do ceremonial hunting. Now, even though they have left the hunting as the means of subsistence, just to remember or that whatever phase we were, people do ceremonial hunting once in a year. And today also in many parts of India, this practice is there. Particularly Vijayadashmi is the day which was supposed to be the day on which you go for such kind of ceremonial hunting. There is a site called Adam in Maharashtra where such kind of evidence has been found. These were properly settled urban people, but still they were doing occasional hunting for ceremonial purposes. Now, certainly a question will come in your mind, how can I identify that it was a ceremonial hunting? Because when there is a ceremonial hunting, people do not hunt for food, but people hunt for fun. And so they will hunt whatever comes in their sway. So you will find suddenly evidence of so many animals of variety of type of species represented in one small context. And suddenly you see 4 or 5 big deer, 1 buffalo, and some deer, some antelopes, some hare, and some such kind of thing suddenly found in a small context. Then when we come to a formal state.
Summarize now.
Yes, in just 2 minutes. Formal state or religion-based societies, there will be social restrictions. We might also have some industrial approach to hunting and supplying the meat. This is the evidence of opportunistic hunting which I was just talking about from a site called Lavradeva in Sant Kabir Nagar district. This is a bone of a cheetah, the one which is now extinct from India. And this cheetah was hunted and consumed at the site. Definitely people have not gone to hunt cheetah. Perhaps the cheetah came into the site and people killed it and consumed it. I will rapidly just skip through these fish and fishing activities, but just give you some pictures of painted pottery showing the fish on pottery. Again, some fish hooks and some painted pottery. Nets also being shown in the pottery. We use modern fishing practices, as I said, for analogical reasoning. So these are some slides showing this kind of a work. Molluscan shells are exploited for food right from beginning, even today. And there is evidence for use of these molluscan shells as food, supplementary food material from many cultural contexts. Again, this is showing some mollusks, shells also used for making bangles and other resources. Now, if you look at the early period to almost modern period, what we see is that hunting, gathering, and fishing differed in various stages of human cultural development. The role played by the hunting and fishing was not same, it varied according to the needs of that particular things. It is also interesting that how humans interacted with the wild fauna around them, or fish fauna around them. I have an example of that. People hunt for some time or exploit wild fauna, and if the fauna gets depleted, in the past we have evidence that they left intentionally that area, let the fauna get regenerate, and after some period of time come back and start again using that fauna. And I have this kind of evidence from a site called Damdama in Uttar Pradesh, where there is a clear cyclical pattern of utilization and depletion of the wild fauna around. Then how humans used wild animal resources as trade contacts or barter exchange contact kind of thing. There is also an interesting evidence from the same site called Damdama. A pygmy hog bone animals were found there, which have come from at least 400 kilometers away from the site, because this species is not found in that particular environment. It had come from Tarai area in the foothills of Himalayas. So there must have been long distance contact even during Mesolithic period. and shells being used for manufacturing bangles. For example, sir, Shikarpur, Vadnagar, Bagasra, Nageshwar, all from Gujarat. So I think I will conclude here and let the questions come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Joglekar. Now, any query or comment from the audience?
Joglekarji, thank you very much. We have any evidence of this dolphin hunting? Because you know that dolphins, when you go close, either they hide in the water or you can see them after long distance. I mean, according to my experience in the sea. So, is it, I mean, you're talking about river Ganga.
Ganga dolphins.
Yeah, but I do not know, I mean, how old, whether during that time these dolphins were there and how the people were going to hunting. So, it is...
No, I don't know how they were hunting, but I have evidence of dolphin bones from the archaeological site.
Those might be died, you know.
No. They are coming from food refuse. They are part of the food consumption refuse. They are not natural deaths. They are coming right within the archaeological sediments, archaeological deposits. So evidence of dolphin is there. How they were doing, I can't say because the other things are not there. Yes.
So you have talked about many sites, Paleolithic, two Paleolithic sites,
Yes.
some Mesolithic.
Yes.
So is it possible to date them by radiocarbon method or some other method?
See, actually the question is falling beyond my topic of discussion today, but we do not directly date the bones. The archaeological sediments are dated by variety of techniques, radiometric techniques, relative techniques, and variety of techniques are there to date the archaeological sediments, and the bones or any artifact coming from that same context is taken as coming from that cultural period. But dating is certainly a very vast area which is beyond my scope of talk
No,
today.
if it is presented as a auxiliary framework, then we can have some idea what is.
No, it's an entirely different topic. I mean, you require 6 months to teach dating techniques. In 10 minutes, I couldn't fit all that.
We can invite one or two more questions if anyone is interested. So thank you. Yeah.
So, नहीं मुझे समझ में नहीं सर थोड़ा थोड़ा लाउड से बोलिए समझ में नहीं आया
No, I have one doubt that you told that they use that bottle for preserving prison or something like that.
Yes.
But why poisoning to when they are going to eat it? I
Okay.
am not convinced with this.
See, what they use is plant poisons, and people over a period of several lakhs of years have understood which poison is poisonous to whom. So people have chosen very carefully, and I'm not talking from my brain here, there is evidence from several communities all over the world. They choose plant poisons of such a nature that the fish will become sedated. They will not die. They will just become sedated, they will sleep, you can call, and then they fish it because then fish won't move. Then they take it, and this poison is not harmful to human beings. So we have clear evidence of ethnographic, that's why I put that thing called modern ethnographic work, where how people do use poisons. I think, is the doubt clear? Is the doubt clear? Still not clear? मैं आपको हिंदी में बताऊं?
No, when things were so advanced, say, now we are not using that type of thing. Why they were using? It means they were very advanced than us.
Sorry?
Means this type of thing in modern nobody is using.
Not here just now. नहीं सर इनका क्वेश्चन एक सेकंड सर मैं फिर से एक बार समझाता हूँ.
नहीं वो मैं समझ गया आप क्या कहना चाहते हैं. मैं ये कहना चाहता हूँ कि क्या उस समय इतना साइंस एडवांस था कि जस्ट ट्रैंकुलाइजर की तरह, मतलब व्हाट यू वांट टू से ट्रैंकुलाइजर,
नॉट ट्राइबल्स.
ओह इट इज ट्रैंकुलाइजर ना.
वी वोंट यूज वर्ड ट्राइब, कम्युनिटीज. मैं बताता हूँ, सुनिए. I think this question needs a special answer because when we look in the past, sir, one second, sir. When we look into the past, everybody is not at the same level of development. Please try to understand. in the contemporary societies, somebody is urban advanced, somebody is sending rockets, and at the same time somebody is doing agriculture also. So all the time people were in different stages of development. Yeah, I'm saying about tranquilizer only.
Okay, I've
Okay,
got,
thank you very.
I've got an example which I can support because if you know the muscle relaxant called curare.
Yes,
Curare was used by Amazon Aboriginal people.
yes,
So they'll shoot the arrow and paralyze certain
Of
animals,
South
deers,
America.
monkeys.
yes, yes.
So, and when they eat that, it's metabolized in the human GI tract. So it doesn't affect the human body. But the animal is paralyzed and they
Yes,
kill the
yes.
animal. So this is one example that this is nothing new, that selective use of poison, which are, some poisons are toxic to animals, not to the human being, because a lot of poisons will get digested when you eat something.
Yes.
So they don't affect the human
Yes,
being.
yes, of course.
So this is one example. I'm just trying to support
Yes,
what
yes.
you're saying.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And there are two tribes, two communities in Sri Lanka who also do the similar kind of curare-like preparations. I am a biologist originally, please.
Thank you, Professor Joglekar, for this very interesting presentation.